Mr. President, as we said, this is the third time you had meeting with President Xi, and the last time being about 14 years ago.
Yeah.
So how do you view President Xi as a leader, and how do you understand his political philosophy?
We do have good conversational chemistry. What I draw back from my meetings with the president in 2009 and 2010 when he was vice president was this sort of thirst for knowledge about international relations and a capacity to have an open conversation about it. Of course, in 14, 15 years, the world has changed. You know, we had the financial crisis in Europe. China has emerged from an emerging power to a major power. We had the asylum crisis in Europe. We've had the emergence of right-wing and left-wing populism in Europe. We've had COVID, and now we have a war in Ukraine, and of course a war in Palestine and Lebanon, and a war in Sudan. So a lot of things are happening. The world order is changing, and in that sense, the president of China has been a good companion to discuss both similarities and differences in how we view the world at the moment.
You've previously depicted China as a strategic, patient, and intelligent power. And you've been here before, many years ago, and this time here again. What are some of the major changes that you witnessed in this country, and how do you understand its modernization?
Yeah, I mean, when I talk about China as a patient power, it's a sort of traditional saying that a century is only one page in history. I mean, there is this sort of innate capacity to wait for something to happen, which a lot of emerging powers don't necessarily have. There's always this urgency to grow elsewhere, and I understand that. You know, Finland went from rags to riches in about 100 years, from being one of the poorest nations in Europe when we gained independence in 1917, to now look at all the rankings, not to speak of happiness and other things. Finland is there. So I guess we were patient with the way in which we grew, but there are a lot of emerging economies that are not patient. And I also think that you're very strategic in the sense that, I look at your big plans, so Global Development Initiative and Global Security Initiative, Belt and Road Initiative. They're all very planned and strategic.
Because you previously mentioned that today's world is characterized by unrest, disorder, and significant change with uncertain outcomes. And given the major initiatives proposed by President Xi that you just mentioned, how do you understand the significance of those initiatives in promoting common development?
What we had during the Cold War was a bipolar world, Soviet Union and the United States. What we had post-Cold War was a unipolar world led by the United States. Now we have a multipolar world. I don't have a problem with the multipolar world, but I think it is quite clear that if it's not backed up by a multilateral world, it leads to chaos, disorder, and conflict. So we need common international rules in common international institutions. And my big argument is that we need to give more agency and power, especially to the global south, if we want to solve the big problems of this world: climate change, demography or immigration, technology, pandemics, or sustainable development. You can't do these alone. You have to share the problems, and you only have common solutions to them. And this means that we need to maintain the current rules, which I think are good, but we need to change the current power structure, which means more power to the global south.
What do you think we should do in order to deal with the challenges that are faced with increasing anti-globalization sentiment, as well as, let's say, protectionism?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to do them within the framework and context of big international institutions, such as the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, the World Bank, and the IMF, International Monetary Fund.
You also said in your speech at the UN that many countries are rejecting multilateral cooperation at precisely the time when we need it more than ever. What kind of message were you trying to send by that?
I'm very impressed with your research. My message is very simple. After the Cold War ended, we spoke about the end of history, that all of the countries, 200 of them in this world, would revert to some kind of a combination of liberal democracy, globalization, and social market economy. Well, it didn't happen. We forgot that sometimes we don't all share the same values, but we're all driven by quite nationalistic interests. And that's what we can see right now, whether it's in the global West, global East, or global South. A lot of countries define their foreign policy and existence based on interests, and then they turn inbound. We start seeing tariffs and protectionism coming in. So the whole idea and the concept of, sharing the world goes to what is mine? How can I protect what I have? And we need to get out of this mindset. And this means, of course, compromise for everyone, not only the West, where, we make a lot of mistakes, not only the East and not only the South. Everyone needs to find compromises to find common solutions to common problems.